Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Allow me to ask this of you. How bad does it get on a regular, normal day for you guys? How likely or what danger or proximity to a false accusation do you face? I ask this question largely for a very valid reason, and that reason is that, frankly, I see something like this happen rarely, very, very, very rarely being here. And these men and women have some issues with each other, but they're pretty rare here. What I tend to face here is very rare. It's usually a false alarm, and my reaction is just a programmed reflex that I got from the States. Yesterday, before I went on my live stream, and I want to thank everyone that came through and everyone that came through on the Cash App and everyone that punched the share button. Yesterday, before the live stream, I didn't tell you all one of the longest things. I mean, there's several things I wanted to catch up on and tell you I've learned about living in Saudi, but the longest one I saved for today, for its own upload. Look, yesterday there was a soccer or football game. Only in the U.S. is it referred to as soccer. It was the male's turn, male faculty's turn. The ladies will have their day, I think. I don't know if they will or not, actually. It would be improper of me to even ask. So, two ladies from the ladies' side of the campus that don't work on the men's side came in, middle of the bleachers, spoke to some of the men that I think they knew them, and then they just sat down in front of me. And my initial reaction, reflexively, was one, to think I sat in somebody else's section, that I sat too close to them, even though I was sitting down first. It was to think that I sat too close to them and that I might make them nervous. Now they're right next to me, and if I move at all and then they notice I'm there, I might make them nervous. They didn't notice me. They didn't realize I was even there. But if I moved now, I might make them nervous, freak them out, scare them. Maybe even make them think I had done something. I was aware of the chances of startling them, scaring them. Then, one of them, she was watching the football or the soccer ball itself kick back and forth. She moved her head, and this is in the space of a few seconds. She followed it with her gaze, and her hijab that was barely on at all began to slip down anyway. And I said, oh God, if she realizes that it slipped down, she might think I pulled it. This is all within the space of a few seconds. All of this panic going through my head at the time was not based on my experiences in Saudi. It was based on my experiences in the States. That's why. That's what it was based on. It was based on nothing but that. They were looking for attention. That's clear from the context. I was there. I saw it. They may have actually been soccer or football fans. That does exist. But where they chose to sit, the familiarity with which they moved into a male's space at a male's scheduled time in the sports center, that was inappropriate. It wasn't hateful or aggressive. It was inappropriate. Now, these ladies appear to have reached an age past marriage. And, I mean, for them, they would have probably had to try a little bit harder to find someone. And they weren't dressed classlessly. It wasn't that. But they seemed to want some attention. In any case, I started thinking, how do I prove I didn't nudge this lady's hijab off her head? And then it dawned on me, you're in Saudi Arabia. There are witnesses behind you that you didn't do anything except look into your phone and tilt yourself a little bit away from them when they sat in front of you and keep your eyes in your phone. You got witnesses. You should be okay. Now, they chose to move their seats to go sit up a little bit higher in the bleachers. And at this point, they were no longer right in front of me. And that was fine. But my initial reaction was a mild panic setting in because of my experience in the States. And I was never formally falsely accused of anything. But I was threatened with it. I heard jokes and I was threatened with it. And that's what scared the stew out of me. I learned that reaction though stateside. To be on guard. To maintain evidence of my innocence. I learned that from the States. I learned that there. My son once was picked up in a work vehicle, according to his job. He was the first one picked up. He got into the front passenger seat. There were going to be men and women that were going to be in the vehicle later on. By him sitting up front, they would sit behind him. He wouldn't sit behind them. Nobody would get creeped out or freaked out. More than likely, he wouldn't have to sit right next to any of the ladies to whom he's not married, and which would make the ladies nervous, or they would appear to be or pretend to be if they're not. Because, you know, women have boundaries. And we need to respect them, right? So my son preemptively, by training and by default, respected the boundaries as he was trained. Respecting everyone's boundaries, actually. As he did that, when it was time to pick up the first lady, I think maybe the only lady for that particular ride, she saw that the front seat was occupied by my son, and she pitched a damn fit. And one of the things she said to him was, go play with some kids. As if that's his stick. From when he told me she's my age. This is someone that feels like it's okay to look at men, come up with an accusation, and then voice it. If she ever was alone with him, she'd get him in trouble. You'd be shocked. The reaction that I had of a mild panic for a few seconds was what I had learned in the States. And I learned this before I left it. Now, the only thing that this country had to do with that was that here we were at a male's event and the women would not be normally that area and they would not be that close. Across the sports center from us, on the other side of the bleachers, there was a particular lady employee that went to the event, and she had two friends with her, and they sat in a corner with a distance between them and everyone else. And they've always been respectful anyway. Everyone sees them. They have a reason to be there. They work on the male side of the campus. That's the job. They do their job. They don't bother anyone. That was not strange. The way they conducted it was completely different. These other two ladies, whom I don't know, some of the men did know them, but I don't know them. These two ladies came in, spoke, and they sat in what would have been the middle, which is right in front of me. I'm sure they didn't know I was there, really. But that was what was strange. Here you'd see everybody sitting next to everybody else. That's one thing. That's okay. But there, what you see is that you would not have expected to see them there. But then once they were there and they were that close, and then one's hijab begins to slide down her hair, that's when I forgot that I was in Saudi for a few seconds. Then I remembered I'm in Saudi. There are witnesses behind me that I didn't do anything. I got my face in my phone. They don't know I'm here. I might be able to get up slowly, walk through some of these other folks, get out of this location, and slip out before I could look guilty of anything. As a black male in the States, I learned this. And as an ambiguous looking male around sisters, I learned this. And if you were on the Mr. Fantastic side of the spectrum as a black male, you probably learned the same lesson. Because as we're now realizing, sisters have actually been harsh to black men of all extreme complexions. We're now learning that. Tara Lowens has proven to us that didn't stop. And I knew what started in 1989 because I had to go through that since then. Wasn't even told what the hell it was until 2001. But I still had to go through it. That's, as a matter of fact, one of the things that I learned is, you know what, I can blend in with the wallpaper here. I can do that. So in any case, that was the end of it. That was the gist of it. I knew that what I went through, when the panic left, and eventually they moved their seats anyway to sit higher in the bleachers. When the panic left, and I realized, okay, wait, that was, all right, that wasn't so bad. But I realized, this happens rarely to me. It's just not a common thing that happens here. But what are you dealing with now? Because, see, I learned this from the States before I left. And you all know I left almost 10 years ago. So it's gotten worse since then, from what everybody tells me in real life and in social media. So what are you guys dealing with now? What's it like for you if you're sitting down and you're eating somewhere and a lady sits unnecessarily close to you based on the spacing of the people in that area, and you know that she knows you're there and you're afraid of an accusation? And how often do you face either a formal false accusation or being threatened with a false accusation? What are you guys facing there? I gotta wonder, because I'm not going through what you're going through. It's not that bad for me. What happens there? I gotta ask you about that. You guys are facing a bigger danger than I am, I'm pretty sure. Um, and the thing is that some people say, well, you guys are just too sensitive these days. No, not so much, because these situations are always abnormally close. When you're a man in the West, especially you're a straight black man in the West, and straight white guys are facing threats of this from their own women too. When you're a straight black man in the West, you're facing threats of this. Let's not forget that one brother that had already been divorced, and his ex-wife accused him of things he did not do, and his pregnant girlfriend said she was going to turn around and do the same thing and make him lose custody of the kids to come. And he just said, F it, I'm taking all of us out. Let's not forget about that case. What did it start with? Accusations. And not one of them was ADOS either. I mean, he might have been, I don't know, but I don't remember where his parents were from. It doesn't really matter. All the women were Western. One was of our race, different nationality and origin. The other one was of Asian or Asian origin, same citizenship. That's what the West does. You're a black man. You're not necessarily protected in that case. The West will do that to you. You're right for a false accusation. You don't have to actually do it. You can simply have gotten too close. Sometimes you can be where you're supposed to be and they get too close. That's who they are, and that's what they are. And I don't know how often you're facing it. I know it's a real thing. I know it's a real pattern, but I don't know how often. I mean, you tell me, when you go outside, is it a very high chance? Is it a very low chance? And I know it depends on where you live too, but y'all let me know what parts of the country in which you live and what the chances seem like, how high they are. Do some of you guys seem to face threats of this more often than other guys are even threatened with it? Is there a way to tell if you're the kind of guy they just want to do this to you? Do you wake up? Do they wake up in the morning and say, well, I feel like doing this to someone today, and you can look at a guy and tell how likely he is to have that happen? How do they size up and determine who they're going to falsely accuse, who they're going to threaten to falsely accuse to try to get something out of him? Y'all let me know as much as you know. We can share gainful information, inshallah. As always, thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. Thank you again for flying with me on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jet black with me until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.